Hey everyone, happy Wednesday. Glad to be here. Thanks for joining me. If you are here, by the way, give me a wave, a thumbs up, a something. And I would love for this session to be interactive and hear your ideas on the 80/20 rule applied to co-working. So please jump in. I'm Jamie Russo. I am the CEO of Everything Co-working. We have a podcast by the same title, and we help operators start co-working spaces, and we train and develop community managers for co-working spaces. So today I'm doing kind of a little deep dive into the 80/20 rule applied to co-working, and that is the topic of the podcast this week. Before I jump in, I have a couple of announcements that I just wanted to cover. One is it is the very last day. I'm going to take the registration down this afternoon to register for tomorrow's workshop. I can't believe it's tomorrow already. We're doing session 1 of the Design to Thrive in 2021 workshop, and tomorrow's session's totally free. So if you want to join us, get a head start on your planning for 2021. I went through all of the process and worksheets that we're going to go through tomorrow on my own. And it was a great experience. Some good ahas, some good kicking my butt on things that I need to get better at in 2021. And then one other quick thing, if you're on our email list, stay tuned. We are working on the 2021 Tech and Tools Guide. So we're sending out a survey so that you can tell us your favorite tech and tools that you use in your co-working business. And then we will reshare that data so you can see how others are using technology to support their member experience as well as their operations. Okay, so let's talk about the 80/20 rule. By the way, I am wearing a fleece inside of my house because our heat is broken. This is not a 911 in Northern California, but it's fairly chilly out and we have no heat in the house, and the heat repair guy is supposed to be coming shortly. Hopefully we don't get interrupted. So the 80/20 rule is based on the Pareto Principle, and this applies to everything. And you've probably casually heard people talk about the 80/20 rule. It is fascinating how it's like a fact. It applies to so many things. I'm going to give you a couple of examples, just a couple of quick ones, because I talked about this in the podcast. The Pareto Principle applies to taxation. In the US, the top 20% of earners paid roughly 80 to 90% of federal income taxes across several years. Microsoft noted that by fixing the top 20% of their most reported bugs, 80% of related errors and crashes in a system would be eliminated. And in baseball, 15% of all players last year produced 85% of the total wins. So the 80/20 rule applies to everything in life, including co-working. So on the podcast, and if you're watching this after I am live, feel free to add to the comments, because I would love to collect how others are looking at 80/20 in the co-working world. So tell us how you think about it. But the podcast episode was really about 80/20ing your co-working business. So being really intentional and focused with your time and your team's time in terms of what activities they're focused on each day. The reality of running a co-working space is that it's really operationally intensive. And so your team doesn't have a lot of time for focused projects that are more strategic in nature and that move the business forward. So we have to keep them super focused when they do have time to work on projects that drive the business. So there are a lot of things we could do let's first talk about the core drivers to your co-working business. These are pretty simple, right? So our business gets moved forward by getting more leads, converting more leads, and retaining members. So we really want to 80/20 those 3 buckets, I think. So real quick, I wanted to share a couple of things that apply a couple of ways the 80/20 rule applies to co-working. We can assume that 80% of our leads come from 20% of our sources. 20% of our members will be very engaged, whereas about 80% will be less so. 20% of our members probably drink about 80% of the coffee, those heavy coffee drinkers that drink all day long, no matter how many times you refill the carafe. 20% of our virtual mail clients will produce 80% of our mail. So 80% of your virtual mail clients will probably never get a piece of mail, but 20% of them will keep you fairly busy. So let's talk about the 20% of activities again that drive your 80% of your results, getting more leads, closing more leads, and retaining members. So I think here it's about really going at those buckets in your business and saying, what are the activities in each of those buckets that we know make a difference? Tracking those over time and monitoring those and seeing what works for you. So maybe you're a co-working space that, let me back up. Let's talk about where leads come from. So most of your leads are going to come from your website, your Google My Business listing, paid ads like Google or Facebook, and hosting events. So I put them in that order because many spaces will get their leads in that order. Maybe you're a co-working space that just kills it with events. You have a real competency for running events that attract your ideal community avatar, and running events for you guys is far better than doing digital paid advertising. Might just depend on the size of your town, the type of your member, kind of the landscape that you're operating in. And so you would want to know this about your business and prioritize your team's resources. The 80-20 rule is really about this idea that we can't get everything done, right? We can't do all the things, all the squirrels and spaghetti, if you listen to my last podcast episode, that we want to get done. We have to choose and we have to help our team prioritize, and we have to prioritize our own time. So there are millions of things that we want to do, and we have to figure out how to fit it in. One other source of lead that I find is a little bit controversial to talk about, but I have a pretty firm stance on it, is social media. So I will see spaces say they get a lot of leads from social media. It's not typical. So active searchers are not on social media. So if somebody finds you on social media and comes in and converts as a member, it's because they sort of tripped across you, right? They saw you mentioned in someone's post and they said, oh, what's this? And they started following you, and somehow they decided that was a solution for them and they decided to come in. It can happen, but that's not where the active searchers are, right? So the active searchers are on Google. So they're going to hit your Google My Business listing, or they're going to hit your website. So unless you know for a clear, proven fact that you get leads from social media, if you have to prioritize your team's time, you want them updating your Google My Business listing every single week. You want them getting reviews. You want them adding photos. You want them adding offers. And you want them making sure that your website is super optimized. And this may not be your community manager team. This may be marketing professionals that you work with on a contract basis. So in terms of balancing sort of budget and time, your website and your Google My Business listing are priorities. Social media may trickle in some people, and we love it because it's free. But here's the other thing about social media. If you're not paying for eyeballs, any post you put up goes to 10% of your audience. 10%, that's it. So if you have an audience of 1,000 people and you put up a post, 100 of them will see it. So you're really doing a lot of work for not a lot of return, oftentimes on social media. And I'm not saying don't participate. And I think in smaller communities, it can be a great way to educate and help people know that you exist and to interact with other businesses in the community. So there is a place where in a time where it's a good strategy, and that may be the case for you, but don't assume that it is just because everyone does it. Typically, it's more of a vanity metric. So like this Facebook Live that I'm doing, not many people watch me live every week. I run ads to the video to amplify my exposure. I have to pay to get eyeballs and to get people to see me, because the organic reach simply is just not very much, and it wouldn't be worth my time to do it organically for free if I wasn't running ads. So while it feels fun and free, I have to, we all have to be very, very, just intentional and realistic about where we're getting the ROI. So be careful about how much time your team is spending on social media. I think the other thing I'll say about the 80-20 rule is it's such a good exercise to go through, because I think as owners, or if you're an owner and a manager, the distractions and the squirrels and the shiny objects are constant, right? And so we get very tempted to let ourselves or our team members chase things that we feel like are suddenly urgent. And on the podcast, I gave a couple of examples of things that are probably common and happen to all of us. So documenting what really moves the needle for your business, tracking those things in your weekly meeting will help you keep your team focused and resist you distracting them and them not being able to do the things that really move the needle, like those Google My Business posts, like following up with tours that came in, making sure that tours show up, all of those things, managing, creating community within your membership for retention. All those things take a lot of time. There's not a lot of extra time to be doing things that don't fall into the 20% of the things that move our business. So I would love, if you're watching this after I'm live, if you have an 80-20 approach that you use for your business, or you've identified the really core things that you focus on in your business that you're willing to share, we'd love to hear from you. So hope you're all doing well. Again, tomorrow is the last day today is the last day to register for our 2021 Design to Thrive workshop, which is tomorrow. So I'm going to put that link under the post. Would love to see you there. Would love to have you join us. I go live every week. Sometimes I'm highlighting posts from the podcast, and sometimes I'm doing a Q&A from our Facebook group. So if you're not in the Facebook group, jump over there. You just search for the Everything Coworking Facebook group, and you can pop your questions into our weekly post when we're doing a Q&A. So thanks for joining me today, and we'll see you next week.